Sometimes, the moment that changes your life doesn't happen in a bedroom or on a first date. Sometimes it happens under fluorescent office lights at 11:47 p.m. when the city is a blur of distant headlights and the only sound is the low hum of an air conditioner that should have been turned off hours ago. Sometimes, a life unravels, not with chaos, but with something as deceptively innocent as your boss, your CEO, placing her hands on your shoulders and saying, "Relax, let me help you." And before you realize what's happening, it's not your back that's being undone, it's everything you thought you knew about yourself.
My name is Sophia, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was exceptionally good at two things: being organized and not feeling too much. I built my life around efficiency: color-coded calendars, inbox zero, carefully crafted smiles. I was the person executives relied on to make problems disappear before they became visible, the invisible hands keeping the machine running. And then I started working for Sydney Hale. Sydney didn't run the company, she was the company. People in boardrooms spoke her name like a weather event, something powerful, something you should prepare for. She had the kind of beauty that wasn't soft: sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that weighed everything, posture so straight it made other people stand taller. She didn't raise her voice, she never had to. And I was her assistant, which meant my life orbited hers. Calendars, flights, calls, secrets spoken between glass walls. It took me 6 months to realize she rarely slept. It took me longer to realize she noticed things no one thought she did, especially about me. The night everything changed, the building had emptied hours earlier. The lights had dimmed into that after-hours hush cities get when nobody expects to be seen. On the 15th floor, only 2 offices still glowed: hers and mine, because I was still there too. Reports were due at dawn. Investors wanted blood disguised as optimism. I had been sitting so long, my spine felt like it had calcified. Every keystroke sent a dull ache through my shoulders, but quitting was not an option. Assistants don't stop before the CEO does. I thought I hid my discomfort well, but Sydney missed nothing. She stepped out of her office without the sound of heels. She had taken them off, another small intimacy I wasn't supposed to witness. She leaned against my desk quietly, and her voice, when she spoke, wasn't the CEO voice. It was lower, unguarded. "You're in pain." I froze. "I'm fine." Her eyes softened in a way that made my breath catch. "Sophia." Just my name, but from her, it felt like a hand closing gently around my wrist. I gave a small laugh because laughter is safer than honesty. It's just tension, comes with the job. She tilted her head. So does burnout, and I refuse to let my best employee fall apart in front of a spreadsheet. I didn't know what to say to best employee. My throat tightened. Before I could respond, she moved behind my chair, close enough for me to feel her warmth through fabric. Then she hesitated. The Sydney Hale who negotiated mergers without blinking hesitated. "May I?" "Your shoulders. I used to play volleyball. I'm not guessing." I should have refused. She was my boss. There were rules. There were policies written exactly to prevent this kind of moment. I nodded anyway. Her hands found my shoulders like they had always belonged there. They didn't wander, no inappropriate hesitation, just strong, assured pressure, thumbs pressing into knots I pretended for months were manageable. I exhaled without meaning to. She smiled. I could hear it in her voice. "You never relax. Even your posture is on duty." "I don't know how to turn it off." "I know. I see you." The words went deeper than her hands. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding myself together until her hands touched me. Sydney stood behind my chair, close enough that the warmth of her body reached me before her fingers did. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Just the sound of the elevator humming somewhere far away, the city humming somewhere farther, and us, suspended. Then her thumbs pressed gently into the tops of my shoulders. Not hard, testing, like someone knocking on a door first, asking before entering. "Here?" she said, voice lower now. "Yes," I breathed, and it came out more like an exhale than a word. Her hands began to move, slow circles, deliberate, like she wasn't guessing where the knots were, but reading them. Her skin was warm through the thin fabric of my blouse. She adjusted the angle of my chair without asking, turning me slightly so she could reach me better, and I let myself be positioned, guided, cared for in a way I wasn't used to. She worked with confidence, not tentative touches, not accidental brushes, real pressure, real intention. Her thumbs sank into the thick bands of tension beside my neck. A dull ache bloomed, then released, like a fist unclenching. She followed the line of my shoulders outward, pressing, pausing, then pressing again as though mapping where I'd been storing years of stress. "Breathe," she murmured, not the work kind of breathing, the real kind. I inhaled. It shook on the way out. She smiled. I felt it more than saw it. Her fingers slid lower to the ridge beneath my shoulder blades, and she changed techniques without saying anything. Thumbs became palms, palms became long, slow strokes down either side of my spine. Each pass left heat behind, like she was ironing tension out of me. Every time she reached a tighter spot, she lingered, held pressure, then eased off gradually, never shocking my body, always guiding it to release. A soft crackle of fabric sounded as my blouse shifted. My skin prickled where warmth met cooler air. Tiny details became enormous. The faint citrus note of her perfume, the whisper of her breath when she leaned closer to see better, the soft click of her ring against my chair when she adjusted her grip. "Does this hurt?" she asked. "No," I said. "It feels like undoing." She seemed to understand that. Her hands traveled slowly upward again, kneading the sinew at the base of my neck, then sliding outward to my deltoids. She rolled each shoulder gently forward, then back, coaxing movement my body had forgotten it could make. I realized my jaw had unclenched, my tongue had dropped from the roof of my mouth. My breathing had changed without my permission to something deeper, heavier, slower. She noticed everything. "There you are," she whispered, almost to herself. She stepped closer. Her hip brushed the back of my chair. Her thigh warmed my arm through my sleeve. Not intentional, simply proximity necessary for leverage, yet electricity flickered through me in response all the same. She leaned in to reach a stubborn knot, and her breath touched my neck. My body responded before my mind formed language. My shoulders softened under her. My back yielded. My head tilted forward instinctively, granting her more access to the tight line of muscle she was working. "That's it. Don't hold yourself up for a moment," she said softly. "Let me." Her hands slowed, becoming almost hypnotic. Long, gliding strokes alternated with deep circular pressure. Every movement had rhythm: press, hold, release. My nervous system followed that rhythm, sinking to it like tide to moon. My fingers loosened around the edge of my desk. At some point, my eyes had closed. I stopped thinking about reports. I stopped thinking about rules. I felt. She slid one hand to the side of my neck, thumb resting at the hollow behind my ear, the other bracing my opposite shoulder, not restraining, but supporting. She tilted my head slightly, stretching muscle along one side, then the other. "Tell me if I go too far," she murmured. "You won't," I said, and believed it. A warm, slow ache spread down my back, not pain, but release so intense that it was almost emotional. Something in my chest tightened and softened all at once. Sydney shifted again. Her hands drifted down my arms, squeezing gently, biceps, then forearms, then the tendons of my wrists. When she reached my hands, she did something small that nearly undid me completely. She held each finger individually, giving a gentle pull, like releasing tension stored in even the tiniest parts of me. No one had ever touched me with that much attention. My throat burned unexpectedly. She paused. "You're shaking," she said quietly. "I know. I didn't realize how loud my body was until it got quiet." Her hands came back to my shoulders, not kneading now, simply resting there, warm, steady, grounding. Not massage, presence. I felt her chest rise and fall behind me, felt her hesitance, felt the line between what was harmless and what was not, hovering in the air like a held breath. She slowly let her hands slide down to rest at the tops of my arms. "Turn around," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I turned. The room felt smaller, softer, like the light itself had lowered. She knelt a little to be level with me again, and now that I faced her, I could see the concentration she had worn while touching me. Focus, care, restraint fighting want. Her hands were still on me. They stayed there. Her thumbs moved just enough to remind me of everything we suddenly were, not CEO and assistant for this suspended moment, but woman and woman, both aware of the gravity of a simple touch. "Didn't I just help your back, did I?" she said. "No," I answered, breathless. "You touched the part of me that won't admit it's tired." Her fingertips brushed the hollow at the base of my throat and lingered there, feeling my pulse, not deliberately seductive, just overwhelmed honesty at close range. The silence between us was alive. She leaned in only a little, as if the massage itself had been a conversation our bodies had already answered, slow, careful, reverent. And when the kiss finally happened, later it made sense only because the massage had already said everything. The massage was the confession.
"Turn around," she whispered. "Only if you want to." I turned. The room felt smaller now, the lights dimmer though they hadn't changed. She lowered herself to my eye level. Not CEO now, not untouchable force, just Sydney, human, close, frighteningly honest. Her hands were still on me. "This is a line," she said. "Tell me to stop and I will. We will go back." I understood the stakes, power, policies, reputations, careers. "I don't want you to stop." She let out a breath like she'd been holding it for months. She cupped my jaw gently, unbearably careful, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. When she kissed me, it wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was soft and trembling and devastating in its rightness, the natural continuation of everything her hands had already confessed. The massage had been the truth. The kiss was just the translation. We eventually broke apart, foreheads touching, breath uneven in an office designed for strategy, not revelations. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "I know, but I've felt it, for a while." Silence, not awkward but full of recognition. "We need to be careful. Power, reputation, your career." "I know," I swallowed. "You're worth the risk." Something undefended flickered across her face. For once, she looked breakable. I don't want anything from you, I added. And for the first time since I met her, she let herself be simply seen. We didn't do more that night. We sat on the office floor, backs against the wall, talking in low voices over cold coffee. She admitted success had made her lonely. I admitted competence had made me invisible. You were never invisible to me, she said.
If you ask whether I regret it, I can't answer simply. It was complicated, risky, against rules someone somewhere wrote to keep life predictable. But regret implies I would choose to go back to sleep, and I wouldn't, because I am no longer the woman who only organizes other people's lives. I am the woman who finally stepped into her own. And all of it, every terrifying, beautiful change, began the night my CEO stayed late. The building grew quiet, and she said something that sounded harmless. "Let me help with your shoulders." She didn't stop, and neither did I.